Good morning to everyone online that has joined us for today's webinar series. My name is Simisola Eyisanmi. I'm the Managing Associate in the law firm of Duale, Ovia, and Alex-Adedipe. At Duale, we have a scheduled webinar series periodically that serves and seeks to explore a variety of topics that is related to all components of the energy sector. During the webinar series, we consider legal and regulatory framework, opportunities, challenges, as well as recommendations that will promote greater efficiency in the sector. Now, today's topic for the webinar today is the sustainability of the national grid. I'll be looking at the challenges and opportunities that we have in that sector. As we all know, the Nigerian electricity sector is broadly divided into generation, distribution, and transmission. Now, at today's webinar, we'll be exploring all of these sectors with particular focus on the national grid. So during today's webinar, we'll be looking at regulatory reforms, technological advancements, potentials for state grids, and how to create a resilient and sustainable national grid. And with us today at the webinar, we have seasoned professionals and experts who are active stakeholders in the market to do justice to today's topic. I'll start, therefore, by introducing our speakers. On that note, I'll start by introducing our moderator, who is the person of Adeniyi Duale. He's a very own partner at Duale. He's the co-founder, partner, and team lead of the energy practice group at Duale, Ovia, and Alex-Adedipe. He's an astute lawyer with close to 2 decades experience in advising on various aspects of financing, policy advisory, transaction structuring, and energy and private equity transactions. He's a member of the Energy Institute, United Kingdom. He's also a member of the Association of International Energy Negotiators. He's a graduate of several high-level executive programs at the Lagos Business School, UC Berkeley, and the University of Navarra. Now, he brings to bear on all transactions, practical and innovative solutions when advising clients, both in Nigeria and across the globe. Adeniyi, good morning.
Thank you, Simi. I was wondering whose profile you were reading. I wasn't sure if it was mine, but thank you very much. Happy to be here, and good morning, everyone, once again.
Thank you. We trust that you lead us in a very engaging session today. Other speakers that we have lined up is none other than Bimbola Adisa, also known as Bim. Is the founder and the CEO of Beacon Power Services. And before founding BPS, he worked as an investment banker at Deutsche Bank, where he focused on the utility and electrical manufacturing sectors. He has worked with major United States utilities and global equipment suppliers, and also has advised on mergers and acquisition, and was instrumental in the largest utility merger in the world at that time. At Beacon Power Services is responsible for guiding the company towards its mission of optimizing electricity network management, reducing energy losses, and increasing access to reliable power in Africa. He's also known for a strategic vision and leadership style, which is characterized by inclusivity, collaboration, and a relentless drive for excellence. Beyond his professional achievements, he actively supports various initiatives aimed at improving education in underprivileged communities. Good morning, James. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Simisola. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is none other than Dr. Idowu Oyebanjo. He's a renowned power systems engineer. He's a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, also a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Power Engineers. He's also a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers. He's also a chartered power systems engineer from the United Kingdom. He's the managing director of Idfon Power Engineering Consultants and can be aptly described as Mr. Power Systems because he has his BSc, Masters, and PhD in Power Systems from the University of Manchester. Dr. Oyebanjo, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Good morning. Good morning. I believe you're muted.
Good morning, Simi. Good morning, all. Grateful to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us today. And last but definitely not the least is Mr. Mokhtar Bounour. He is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Egbin Power Plant PLC, which is the foremost privately managed thermal plant in sub-Saharan Africa that powers over 20 million homes and businesses. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, master's degree in business administration, and an MBA in management, and master's in international trading. He has several and versatile experience across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. He has also led multifunctional teams in EPC construction, operations and maintenance, power generation, fertilizer plants, open and combined cycle power plants in different developing countries across the world. At Egbin Power Plant, he also leads the plant optimization strategies, whilst spearheading the company's emission reduction and resource efficiency targets. He's responsible for overseeing the company's ongoing transformation with a view to propelling the energy mix transition towards enhanced environmental stability. He's multilingual, very fluent in French, Arabic, English, and Spanish. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Mr. Bounour.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So without further ado, I'm going to allow our moderator to be Adeniyi to take the floor and dive right into the topic. Adeniyi, please, from you proceed.
Thank you so much. Yes. Okay, welcome again, everyone. I think that one of the things that has become critical this year, especially in 2024, is, if you look at it, I was having a conversation with someone a few days ago and realized that there were at least 11 system outages this year from the grid. And so at some point we started thinking about it that, okay, you know what, let's bring together a couple of people who basically can come up with the kind of solutions we think can basically work in the jurisdiction such as Nigeria. So, just heading into that, I think that my first question I'll have, and I think I'll be directing it to Dr. Oyebanjo, is the fact that given where we are, what would you say are the most significant challenges in terms of the national grid with regards to maintaining a lot of sustainability and basically dealing with the policy issues that we have in relation to the national grid? If I'm going to expand that a little bit more, is to say that what kind of technological interventions can also be done based on your experience and where we are.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a power system expert, so what I will be speaking about here today is based on my experience in the Nigerian and UK power sectors that I have worked in. So I will say it as it is, and it's going to be helpful to pick the best of the points and make use of them. The challenges we have in the Nigerian power sector are multifaceted. There are quite many, but you have asked me for the most challenging ones, and I'm going to talk about the most challenging ones. The most challenging problem, by my assessment, having worked over 2 decades in the UK and having worked also in Nigerian power sector, is meritocracy. That is the main problem as far as I'm concerned. Having worked there, like I said, I know the quality required to make a power system work. For any power system to work, you need meritocracy. Meritocracy in various aspects of the power system. Those who are square pegs in appropriate holes, round pegs in round holes, if there is anything like that. Meritocracy meritocracy is the fundamental that make us to have power system in UK. It is the fundamental for power system in United States and any other country where you have 24/7 electricity. Meritocracy must be the first thing. We'll talk about that because as I begin to expatiate on the various challenges, you will see beneath each of them, you will see why meritocracy is related to the problems. How do you use policy to get meritocracy in place? Instead of your grid document, instead of your law establishing a power system agency to say anybody can be leader of that agency, accountants, lawyers, or anybody, engineers, be specific. If you want a power system, be specific. There are some technical aspects of the power system that no other people without professional background will never lead you to success. You can have a business admin. Look at the CEO of Egbin here with us. His first degree, you see, is BSc in electrical engineering. Then he went for management courses. So when we speak on power system, when we talk to him about reactive power compensation, he understands what we are saying. So that's number one. Policy, state clearly, because the question asks what policy interventions are required to solve the problem. If you look at the EPSRA that's now no longer in place, they wrote that the following shall be commissioners of this NEC. And then they wrote all the kind of professions. And then it was possible for them to put only lawyers at one time. And later we fought very hard using our professional association to bring in electrical power engineers into the commission lately. So that's number one problem. The second one is lack of coordination. The power system in Nigeria, the power sector is having a lack of coordination. So many projects are ongoing that are crisscrossing one another. You have a project going on, it's uncompleted, they will go and start another one. That means the same thing, in the same area, in the same place, waste of money, waste of resources, waste of time, no project management. Knowledge is power. You cannot have projects of power system here and there unplanned. What is the outcome? In the last 20 years, zero. Zero because you have a mismatch in the capacity in the country. Just think about a country that has installed generation capacity of 13,500 plus. It has even risen now to about 14,000 because of the Bimbola project. Now, think about it, 13,500. But they cannot even wheel out 6,000 through the transmission network. If they attempt to get to 6,000, just write this down, the grid will collapse, which is one of the reasons you are having grid collapse since recently. It cannot do more than 6,000. How come somebody will have 13,000, but he cannot push it through a transmission network? Oh, it's even worse. The distribution sector cannot take more than 3,500. That's why the whole population is consigned to incessant grid collapse. Why? Nobody is looking at it. Nobody is planning. Nobody is looking at a power system as end-to-end. Whereas in the UK, the first thing we will do is to find out where are our load centers. We will do what we call power system planning. And those are the most brilliant people in power system that will be in that team. Meritocracy is used to select those of us who can even be, in fact, as pupillage or as graduate trainees in system planning. Because that is the heartbeat of the power system. And Nigeria does not do system planning. If they do a system planning, they do it as political one. Oh yeah, put it in my country, put it in my state. Oh yeah, put this. It's a political project. It will cause grid collapse. Let me tell you the truth. There are projects put in certain part of Nigeria that are causing the regular grid collapse. I can tell you for a fact. Because they have used political idiosyncrasies to put those projects in those places where there are no humans, where there is no load, where there is no Cadbury, where there is no Toyota factory, where there is no plant, where there are no plants. What happens in power system is what we call Ferranti effect. Ferranti effect means that, look, if I have electricity and there is nowhere for it to go, I will start to raise voltage. When I raise voltage and the voltage becomes too much, it will collapse that grid. Yet, the people who are trying to put those substations in their own part of the country, they are forgetting that they are going to cause grid collapse there. Knowledge is power. Meritocracy is number one problem that I see. How do you use policy to correct that? One, The renewed hope agenda policy of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu clearly states that it shall establish within 100 days of his administration a presidential advisory task force on power meant to address this problem, because I was a contributor to that document. They've not done it. They've not done it. Over 300 and something days, the thing we wrote for 100 days performance has not been done. So most times it is not the lack of policy. It is the lack of implementation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. That's very, very interesting few comments that you have in relation to that question. I think my next question will be just going from that. I mean, I'm going to go to Bim now. In terms of the sustainability relating to grids, I'm thinking what kind of smart grid technologies can be deployed to basically deal with the issues that we're facing with regards to the grid, and what do you think will be the main barriers in adopting those smart grid technologies, essentially given the experience in terms of what you do? So maybe you can just share a few pointers with us.
Thank you very much, Nii, and thank you, Dr. Oyebanjo. I'll pick on a couple of things he said, because I think it's important to contextualize the question. Right. I will speak to the technology, but it's not completely disconnected. I would put the problems with the grid in three buckets. I would say technology is one. I would say structural, which is, I think, is a lot of some of the issues Dr. Oyebanjo mentioned, and I would say regulatory, right? Because these things are interrelated, right? From a technology standpoint, which is my, quote unquote, subject matter expertise, I'll speak to that, but I'll touch on how structural and regulatory issues also impact technology. I think probably one of the fundamental things is, from a technology standpoint, there is no reason why grid visibility shouldn't be universal, right? And when I say grid visibility, we should be able to know, right, what's coming into the grid, what's at the grid at every point. The regulator should be able to know, the utilities should be able to know, and the consumers should be able to know as well. It should be transparent, right? Again, it's not rocket science. We all have smartphones these days, and that packs a lot of technology. What we do at BPS is we provided a smart grid platform, which we've actually deployed in other countries, built in Nigeria, but deployed in Ghana, deployed in Zambia as I'm speaking. We're in Togo, currently in Togo, and we're looking to deploy this. And it just simply tells you what is coming into the grid. So from Mr. Mokhtar's perspective, what is generated, from the TCN's perspective, what comes in, from the utilities perspective, what they're receiving. So, there's a saying, you can't control what you can't measure. So for us, from a technology standpoint, the first thing is you've got to be able to measure and see what's coming through. That transparency then allows you to be proactive, right? Because you can tell where there's load imbalance, you can tell where there are issues, then you can address those issues. Again, I don't think these things, the lack of implementation, I don't think it's a technology issue. I think these are where you get to structural and regulatory issues, that there's no reason why this shouldn't be implemented. But I think, Dr. Oyebanjo touched on some of the challenges we have in terms of being able to measure this. But I would add a second problem that in our view, the grid in Nigeria has also become quite complex. And I think we're a large country with one central grid, and everything is interconnected. And essentially, from our perspective, we're moving at the pace of the lowest common denominator. So our view is, first, from a technology standpoint, you have to have grid visibility. And again, if I could say, no pun intended, it's not rocket science. We've done it, and we're already doing this. We already have implemented technology in Nigeria that allows you to see and measure and track the grid, right? And the second piece is, how do you then ensure the grid is you break it into bite sizes. Now I'll speak from a matter of opinion. Again, in our opinion, we think the grid, you could break it into a series of interconnected grids, right? There's no reason why within Nigeria, a large country, you could, I mean, if you look at the US, which has a sample template, in the US, you have CAISO, which is California, which is its own grid. You have ERCOT, which is Texas. You have MISO, which is Midwest. You have the Northeast, NISO. These are all independent grids. So what that means is if the grid collapses in New York, someone in Texas would not be in the dark, right? But if there's excess in New York, they can sell to the MISO. If CAISO doesn't have power, which has happened, they can import from ERCOT in Texas. There's no reason we can't do that, right? And again, that gets to structural and regulatory issues, right? So for us, the technology is already there, but it has to be married with the appropriate structural and regulatory steps to ensure that this thing is not so big and cumbersome that we can't manage it, which is essentially what we have now. It's very big, it's very cumbersome. We don't even know where to start. We have no visibility on anything at all, right? And then, of course, you have actually, I think, correction, it's not 11. The last I read, I think it's 22 collapses this year, right? I mean, the 21st century, this should not be happening, right? So I'll pause there.
All right, Bim. Okay. That's a lot. Okay. Moving on to Mr. Bounour, and just flowing from what Bim had said, I'm thinking about it that in terms, I mean, because I know you mentioned what independent grids can do, and given what you do, I'm just thinking, what kind of contribution can independent grids make towards the sustainability of the national grid as we presently have? What would you say would be the best practice in getting those grids or the state grids into the national framework as we have it, or how it can be, utilized? And what role would you say energy storage will play in this integration?
Thank you for the question. Very smart question, and is really linked to what's going on the electrical system in Nigeria. Now, to avoid repeating what my colleagues were saying, I just joined them for every statement that have been made. I am 100% aligned with that. In terms of grid stability and grid, collapses and, small grids that are connected to the national grid, the technology will play the biggest role in terms of having a strong protection system, smart and strong protection system that is based on online data and reaction on time, so to avoid grid collapses. Grid collapse shouldn't happen at all at any point of time if you have a strong protection system that can eliminate any defect of impacting, the grid. So whenever you have a small issue on the generation side or on the distribution side, that small issue will stay in that zone, in small zone, and will not impact the integrity of the system. And to have that, you have to have a strong protection system that can act on time and eliminate, the source of issues. So it will not impact, the integrity of the system. So anywhere in the world, a grid collapse right now shouldn't happen unless, it's a catastrophic, situation when you have a big earthquake or, big massive destructions of the grid. If not, small issues and, that can happen anyway in any grid shouldn't lead to any grid collapse. Nigeria is a country of opportunities. I mean, we are focusing more on talking of challenges and what we are facing, and the behind that is a lot of opportunities for improvement and a lot of opportunities for investments. I think the major action that we should take, and the first priority, is to make that system of investments working perfectly. one of the biggest challenges that all investors are facing in the electrical system or electrical sector that I'm considering as a system. The electrical sector is fully integrated system from the generation side to the transmission side to the distribution side. And if you take, the thermal plants, gas turbines and steam turbines, the majority of the production in Nigeria, you need to add the factor that you have to have gas. So any problem on each part of the system will impact the end user, will impact us as, I am, for example, the CEO of a power generation company, but at home I am a customer of that sector. I'm receiving the power generation in my at home. It doesn't mean that my power generation at home is coming from Egbin. It can come from anywhere from the grid, because the grid is a network that is solid and interconnected. So at any point of time, a kilowatt is produced by a generation company, it is consumed at the same time. So there is no storage to the alternative power. There is no technology right now in the world to stock that kind of alternative power. What we can store is another type of energy that I will talk about it later. So in order, to have 24 power generation to all customers, no grid collapse, this all system have to work perfectly. And the technology exists. It's not something new. Technologies exist. And all of us, when we are traveling around the world, we spend 1 week, 2 weeks in any country, even if countries in Africa, it's very rare to see, cut in the electricity. So we have a lot to do here in Nigeria in terms of improving, the grid capabilities, improving, the grid protections and technology, improving, the power generation sector by putting, more investment and more technology, and improving also the distribution part by also extending and upgrading many systems on the power and the distribution side. I'll go later on maybe on details on the challenges that we are facing together as electrical system, and are common to every one of us, and you can find them it's public information now on the challenges that we are facing in the electrical system. But the most important is not, to identify the challenges. The most important is to move to action and start working on them. And this is the lack that we are having here. So we talk a lot about, everywhere about the challenges, but few actions only are taking place to improve or to go out of the situation.
Hello?
I can hear you. Yes.
I wasn't sure. I think that we can't hear Mr. Bounour again. So, okay. Okay, you're back. Okay.
I don't know at what time you lost me, but I was speaking to myself.
I think it was just when you were saying more action has to be taken as against just talking about the challenges. Yeah.
Exactly. I was saying that the challenges of the electrical system are known to everyone, even to the public. But the major, issue in my point of view, is to start working on them. I mean, taking actions, and the speed is taking actions is not there. So we need to put more energy on taking actions on solving the current issues, and move ahead with the new Nigeria or new electrical system here.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you on that. Okay. I think my next question will be directed at Bim. And how would you say the digital platforms and other technological innovations are transforming the national grid? So if you can just, I know you had mentioned something earlier, but if you can just expatiate on the kind of solutions and, and that would be super for us. Thank you.
No, thanks again, Nii. I mean, and as I said, as my colleague said, I mean, the technology isn't really rocket science. It's not new. I'll give some examples of what we've done at BPS. We have a platform called Adora. Adora is a smart grid platform. Smart grid is really a buzzword. But I'll just make a quick point real quick. I think one of the things we become a little bit, for lack of a better word, obsessed with is going to copy and paste solutions from elsewhere. Our grid in Nigeria, it's far removed from what we have in developed markets. Let's even forget Africa in developed markets, right? And it's okay if you're in Europe to have some super sophisticated, you have people talk about SCADA systems and all these things, right? I always joke, I say it's like taking a Ferrari to a village that has no roads, right? When you want to move, you just need a very basic, you need something, a building block to start with, right? So we don't need to know power factor in like 0.15 second intervals because we don't even have power 10 hours a day, right? But to your question, so at BPS, we've built a platform called Adora. It's a smart grid platform. It's being used by 3 of the discos in Nigeria now for parts of their network. It's being used by the national utility in Ghana. And it can tell you in real time how much energy is coming in and from where across any substation, feeder to a transformer, right? It can tell you in real time when outages happen. It has a predictive analytics function that actually looks at what, that tells you based on, it uses machine learning algorithms to look at patterns and tells you when an outage is likely to occur, right? This was built by engineers in Nigeria, not in some other place somewhere. It was built by engineers in Nigeria. So in our view, these things are parts of the solution. They exist. But like I said, you've got structural and regulatory challenges that mean often it's more expedient to take them elsewhere and deploy them elsewhere than to deploy them in the country where it was built. So that's where I come in and say it's interrelated. So, I mean, in terms of the impact of technology, I think the technology exists, as Mr. Mokhtar said. One final point I'll add is, so I think that it's more the willpower to make sure this works. And I think Mr. Mokhtar made a very important point, which is, let's stop talking. Let's figure out how we can get these things universally adopted, right? That's the solution. How can we, in 3-6 months, come back and say, look, if it's not the entire grid, today, if we have visibility that's 25%, how can we get to 50% in 6 months, to 100% in 12 months? Let's have a roadmap and let's start to measure ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to do that. So I think that's number one. I think the second piece I'll just mention real quick is also the importance of data in that. And what do I mean by data? I mean, even simple things like mapping our grid. Dr. Oyebanjo mentioned a point earlier about multiple projects crisscrossing. We need accountability. We need a very, very solid baseline of what is going on. Where are the assets? Which asset is connected to what, right? Because then you can start to create this visibility, create accountability, and then the technology then becomes optimal, because then you could use the technology in a way that is optimal. And like I said, I think all the speakers have said it here, in the 21st century, it's really an aberration that we're having grid collapses. There are countries that we pray there's never war. There are countries that are in wars that their grids don't collapse. So for the fact that our grid has collapsed 22 times is a real strong indictment, right? But the technology is not the problem. It's this will to kind of really do something about it, and accountability to ensure that we're holding ourselves accountable in implementing the technologies that allow us to get past these problems.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Bim. Before I move ahead, I was just going to mention to everyone viewing that you can basically drop your call. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat box for us so that at the end of we can get the panelists to also answer a few of the questions that have been dropped there. So, Dr. Oyebanjo, so I'm going to move the conversation a little bit, and I think that, again, when we look at things, I think that it's important that we just try and understand how impactful an independent system operator can be in the system, especially in terms of the sector. So the question I have for you is that, so in terms of impact of the independent system operator, what kind of impact can they make, especially in terms of the framework that we currently have? And in your view, what would you say will be the best recommendation in terms of creating a structure that will work, and given where we are and how it can be implemented? So I think that it will be good to know what your perspective on this will be.
Right. So we were talking, someone was talking earlier, I don't know whether somebody spoke about it is not implementation. It is always about implementation in Nigeria from my experience. The policies are there. The right policies are there. For example, the policy of the federal government of Nigeria, the Electricity Act, signed into law on Thursday, June 9, 2023, more than a year ago, stipulates that there shall be an independent system operator by the 31st of August the following year. It's not been there. So that's one example. Another one, in that same document, it says that there shall be a document called the Integrated Electricity Policy and Strategic Implementation Plan, 18 months from the day of signing this document. It's not there. And there are a lot of policies like that I can give you, and that they are not implemented. And they are not implemented most times because the focus on meritocracy is not where it should be. Now, let's go to your question of the independent system operator. An independent system operator is a must for a successful electricity market, because what independent system operator means is that that system operator will not be a part of the transmission company of Nigeria. So it gives a fair position for the competition that you assume you have in your market. So your question is right. It will be so impactful. How will it be impactful? First job, enforcement of the grid code. The grid code is like your Bible or your Quran or your holy books for your power system. Now, the grid code has to be enforced so that the generator, people like Mokhtar, Bounour, they will be happy. The distributor, the discos, they will be happy, and transmission company and everybody that is playing. But if the grid code is not enforced by anybody, and the body that is supposed to enforce it is a part of one of the players in the market, how will that person say that the grid collapse was caused due to a fault of Transmission Company of Nigeria when it is a part of Transmission Company of Nigeria? How? The salary is being paid by the MD of that company. So we moved. They fought us significantly that you would think that we will have run away. But we said, no, this is our country. So we stood there and fought them for 7 years, and we got that Electricity Act. Since a year, 365 days more. People have the golden Electricity Act that should make their states to develop. They didn't do it. Only 6 states have signed their own electricity law. Why? Because most people don't want this thing that we're talking about. So when you have an independent system operator in an electricity market, which I know will happen in Nigeria in the next 2 months as we are following, you will have system planning. You see all those projects I told you that could go to backyard of a particular political order. They will not happen if you have an independent system operator. The word independent means that no president can tell them, go and put it in my backyard. No minister can tell them, go and put it in my place. They will do power system studies. The network will be planned properly. Then they will coordinate all the investments. They will say, no, you cannot carry on that particular one that you are doing. You will do this one because of our calculation of cost benefit analysis. We have looked at return on investment. We have looked at rate of payback, blah, blah, blah. They will do the work as proper power engineers. When we were going through the pupillage training, this was how we were trained. And a properly trained power engineers in charge of the ISO, we know what to do. Because he will have gone through 20 years of how we plan a realistic network. So planning will come. Bounour talked about protection. My God, this is so important. Protection is the main problem. This is your grid collapse you are having every time, is protection. Bounour can bear me out. Only few people in the world, including myself, no protection. Only few. I'm not saying Nigeria. Only few people in the old world, no protection. And I'm glad that it was him who said protection system is one of the problems that can solve the grid collapse. In the whole of the world, there are only few people in protection. Out of the few people in protection, only few of us are the experts inside this. So a country like Nigeria that doesn't have standard of protection, doesn't have standards of setting, doesn't have protection philosophy, we try to rise it for them, we gave them everything, they didn't even take it, they didn't apply it. There will be grid collapse. It will continue to increase in number because there are no protection systems, adequate protection system in place. When you have an independent system operator, it will stop that. You want me to stop? I will stop there for now if you want. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I can hear you. Sorry about that. I think there was a little bit. Thank you, Dr. Oyebanjo. So, Mr. Bounour, my next question to you will be, in terms of the transmission sector, what are the key investment opportunities you think that will be open to the private sector that can enhance the grid sustainability? And how do you think the public and private can work together towards sustainability of this grid?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We have a minimum 3 actions that we should take as soon as possible. We need to look at, one of them is again, the protection system, the philosophy of the protection system of the grid have to be reviewed and adapted, to a system, electrical system that will not allow, any grid collapse. So if you have a strong, philosophy of your protection system, you'll never have total grid collapse. You'll have partial, maybe isolated, issues. The second one is the grid. We need to look at, the age of the installation and the equipments on the grid and have them replaced or upgraded or retrofit. It's very, very important for the grid stability for the transmission lines. And then the third one is, to extend. And to extend is an opportunity for business for many of the private sectors that they need to put hands on hand to extend, the grid. Just to give, I don't want to compare, European country with Nigeria, but sometimes you need to have references only, just, to have an idea on how the grid capacity is in other countries, just for you to understand. And in Spain, the population is 45 million, okay? Here in Nigeria, I think we have around 5 times that. It's around more than 200 millions. The grid capacity, power generation capacity, the grid capacity in Nigeria, in Nigeria now is around 5,000. It's a 5,000 megawatt plus or minus, 10%. In Spain, only between 2022 and 2023, they added 7,000 megawatt. 7,000 megawatt. They added 7,000 megawatt from 2022 to 2023 in 1 year. So here we are talking about 5,000 megawatt, and we are expecting to move to 6,000. And the grid capacity here maximum is 8,000. So the opportunities are huge for investment, for extending, for upgrading. The total capacity of the grid in Spain is 125, more than 125,000 megawatt for a population of 45 million. Of course, the grid is not, the electrical system is not only for population, it's for the industry. So it gives you an idea. It gives you an idea about what is the gap that we have here in terms of investing in the local industry. Okay, we need to develop the local industry. So to develop the local industry here, you need to invest in the power sector. The power sector right now is struggling. All businesses. So we are focusing on power sector, but all businesses that require equipments and services from outside Nigeria are struggling with the forex. You don't have liquidity on the market. You don't have access to forex. Many companies, including ourselves, will go to buy, dollars from the black market, to pay and to buy, equipments and buy, services. The forex is one of the biggest challenges that all industries, included the power sector, are facing. The solution for it is to start exporting. To export, you need to develop local industries. To develop local industries, you have to support them with all, solutions that are needed. So it's just, I moved from, micro to macro to give you an idea about, what are the options of solutions and options that we have in terms of, opportunities around us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bounour. I'll go back to Bim, right? Actually, no, I'm going to go back to Dr. Oyebanjo. Just thinking about it, in terms of the national grid, and we're thinking, I mean, the panelists here have indicated, oh, that it's important that, I mean, Mr. Bounour gave an example in terms of in Spain, in the last few years, they basically increased their generation without any issues, right? So how can our own national grid better accommodate the increasing demand that we have and share it? And is the way to go, is it to find how we would include renewable energy as part of it, or we should just look at other sources? What in your own experience, I mean, if they're not just asking you, they say, okay, you know what, you have the powers to do this, what would you suggest?
First thing, I will say, implement that policy you have since June 2023 called Electricity Act. Any state that is yet to declare its electricity market, it is so unfortunate. That state doesn't want any form of development. Just forget that state. So the Electricity Act is a law. It says that you should bring in renewables to your state, bring in solar panels on your roof, sell to the grid, bring in wind farms into your area, use hydro, use all kinds of renewable energy sources. That's number one. Decentralize that power system. It is no longer functional because it's not that it's too big. It's a small power network, very small. But because of lack of what I keep on saying, it has been run aground. So if you have a complex problem, how do you solve it in your private life? If you have a big complex problem, what do you do in your private life? The first thing you do is you bring it to small chunks so that you can address it. Let all the states go and solve their electricity problem. Let them bring in renewable systems. Let them bring non-renewable systems. That's the first thing that will be done. Integration of renewable system into a power grid has issues. It has issues for stability. Simple. Those who are good in protection, which Mr. Bounour talked about before, and I have been advocating, they know what to do to bring in any form of renewable system. They will write the protection system such that it will ride through the faults and all the problems you can have. Make sure that you have an independent system operator, knowledgeable people, meritocracy, meritocracy, meritocracy. They are the only people who will know what to do. They will set the system right, and that's all I have to say. Meritocracy is key.
All right, thank you very much for that. Bim, this is a different question, and I think it would be good to share, for you to share your perspective relating to, is there a world in which you would suggest or recommend that bulk power suppliers engage grid management solution providers with a view to optimizing what they're doing?
I think the short answer is yes. But again, I'll contextualize it by saying, I mean, what would make it effective, right? Because again, they could engage. I think it makes sense. But as we've seen with, and as I mean, the other panelists have mentioned, with a lot of things in Nigeria, it becomes ineffective, or it ends up not being effective. So I think in an ideal setting, yes, I think it's something the bulk supply should do. But I think for me, the key with the sector, and this is why I say it's structural, not technology, and maybe the word we use is meritocracy or something else. For me, the key point is the point that was raised last, right? Which is around breaking it down. Whether or not the system is big or not big, right? It's become unmanageable. So whatever we introduce into the current system, we're introducing it into a mess, and it's impossible to have visibility. And because you don't have that visibility, you can't have accountability. We'll continue to write these policy papers. We'll continue to, and someone will say, oh, the policy is there, or this is in place, but nothing would happen. I'll go back just very quickly to, I mean, the point raised by Mokhtar earlier on about Spain adding 7,000 megawatts. And we talk about all these things. I bring renewables, wind, solar. It's all. The key thing is everything costs money. Everything is expensive, right? So it's not free. When doing that, they spend money to do it. But they'll spend the money because it's investable, right? Because people would pay for the electricity. That payment will go back to pay whatever was used, right? And then they can go from 120,000 megawatts to 125,000 to 130. We get stuck at 5 because, I mean, the consumers can't pay the discos can't pay the transmission, they can't pay the power producers, the power producers can't pay gas, right? And we end up in this vicious cycle, right? So for me, how do you break it? We have to break it into chunks. We've got to decentralize, have greater accountability. And in my opinion, might not be, I mean, I'm not a politician, might not be kind of popular, but let's focus on areas within the grid that we can optimize. These countries we look at as templates, whether it's Spain, France, Germany, right? They started with industrial commercial nerve centers that worked, right? So for me, it doesn't make sense where you have places like, I mean, and I'll mention this not to, maybe like Oregon, like an industrial center, right? We starve them for power because, you know what, since somebody in, I don't know, some village somewhere doesn't have power, let nobody have. Let's carve that out. Let's create a decentralized grid and focus on these areas that can afford it, right? That where there's industrial and commercial activity. Then you could implement all these things. You could have an independent operator to regulate. You can ensure that there's sufficient economic value, right, to put in the capacity. That economic value then feeds into everything else. And over time, what happens is you effectively end up with the system cross-subsidizing. So sorry, I know I've digressed from your question, perhaps, but I think, I mean, for me, it's just fundamental, because otherwise, I mean, I want to leave this with an upbeat session. I don't want us to walk away with everything else that it's all like Debbie Downer. There are solutions. There are opportunities, right? There are pockets of opportunities. But again, for me, I think the key is to break this thing down, to kind of break it down into smaller chunks and to focus on a sustainable system where affordability is key, where you're supporting the people that basically create economic activity. That economic activity can ensure that what is provided when you go and buy turbines or you buy substations or switchgear, there's enough funds generated to pay for it. You're not having to go to black market to kind of buy FX. That would then grow the system. So I think, but that happens only with decentralization, which is a structural problem rather than a technology problem.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bim. Mr. Bounour, what strategies would you say can be employed towards a smooth transition to a more sustainable energy mix? So again, I guess in the world that we live in now, what you're finding now is that even generating companies also, I mean, the sources of their generation obviously is quite different. So I think for me, and I think my question is more, what are the key strategies that a company such as yours is utilizing towards ensuring a smooth transition towards a more sustainable energy mix?
Okay, thank you for the question. Some of the items were covered by my colleagues linked to this question of what is the best strategy. And me, I think it's about, you know, consistency in our actions, and the fact that we shouldn't give up during the implementation, and focus on improving the findings rather than giving up and try to find another solution. At Egbin, we are bringing energy to life responsibly, and here on responsibly, I'll focus on responsibly more, is about, you know, what are you giving back to your community and the environment around you. It's not about, you know, making business, making you know, money, and that's it. You need to have that, you know, the full picture on what is your added value to the sector, what is your added value to the community and to the country. So at Egbin, we of course, our first priority is safety and integrity of our people and assets. You cannot succeed in any strategy if you don't have motivated resources that you trust them and they trust you, and they fight and they work for you hard. So the manpower is a key of any successful strategy. Then you need to put a business plan that can make money, so they can generate values around you, and then you can, you know, take care of your employees, take care of, you know, the stakeholders, and, you know, invest more. On that, you need to know the right technology. You need to do the right investments and at the right time. So timing is very important. We are considering ourselves part of, you know, the success of the entire system. So we'll never isolate ourselves from the other players in the market. Even, you know, other producers, we don't look at them as competitors, but we look at them as partners in the same battle. So we work together with all parties, and this is very important for the stability of the system, including the distributors, the transmission, and other players, the gas producers, and we look at what are their problems and how we can participate with them in finding solutions. again, at macro level, I'm insisting a lot on this because it's always coming up to my head. I mean, there is a must of developing local industries here to be able to export. When you start exporting, you will get, rather than going and buying FX, you will have FX coming here, so you can create, that dynamic in your system that can help all, potential, business leaders and business opportunities to grow. So these are, the very quick overview of, my view about how we can improve the strategy and the system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we're going to open up there are a couple of questions that have been asked, and I think those questions relate to. Okay, so just looking at it, I think the first question is, what do you think is the maximum megawatts power to be generated, which is ideal to get 24/7 power to everyone in the country? Maybe I should start with you, Mr. Bounour. What do you think is the ideal generating power, given that you're a generating company?
Yes,
to
thank you.
basically ensure, yes.
That's very smart question. I mean, the grid capacity here in Nigeria is 8,000 megawatt. Current situation, we are generating around 5,000 megawatt. To have 24/7 electricity is not only about how much you are generating. It's about whatever you are generating a megawatt is delivered at the same moment to the end users without disruption. So it's it's a fully integrated system. If you have a problem with generator, the generation side, it will impact your end user. If you have a problem in the transmission, you will have an impact on your end user. And if you have a problem in the distribution side, you will have the same problem on the end user. So in order to have that 24/7, so these three parts should be all the time online, working together without failure. So it's improving the capacity of the power generation. You will reach out to more people. But with the megawatts that you are generating, you have to make sure that it's delivered properly to all people. So it's not only about the capacity of the generation. It's about the system that is working properly to reach out that megawatts to the population. So as per the grid capacities here, the maximum that you can generate up to now is go to 8,000 megawatt. But even with 5,000 megawatt, we are not able, to get the entire power generation distributed properly to the end users. So again, here you have to invest in improving the power generation, and you have to improve at the same time, the transmission, and at the same time also the distribution. Three systems together. You cannot separate anyone from the other. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next question, I think I'll address it to Bim. It says, how can we address the low demand versus the targeted power assets for effective load profiling and load forecast, especially given the terrains of progressive exponential growth? So the example is, considering the distribution sector, you have power transformers that have been overutilized, and some of them are underutilized in a certain network. So how do you deal with issues relating to those sort of things coming up with regards to the distribution transformers, as well as dealing with communities that end up being, I'm not sure this question is very clear, but I think what the person was just basically trying to ask is that, how do you address the local demand versus the targeted power assets based on load profiling and load forecast. So
thank you for that, Nii. I think again it's visibility, right? It's boils down to being able to have visibility across the network. It's somewhat related to the first question, which is, and I don't want to digress, which is 24/7 power. But without, I mean, I would actually maybe reframe the question and say, with what we have now, are we utilizing it optimally? And the answer is probably no, right? What should be, I mean, let's look at things incrementally, right? With what we have, can we get everybody on average, I mean, 14 hours, 12 hours, ensure that, enforce that, and then set targets and improve on that, right? Rather than jump to 24 hours. And part of that relates to the second question, which is why I digressed. The question around demand and matching demand, it boils down to visibility. We need to have visibility across feeders. We need to have visibility across our transformers and ensure that, look, how many customers are on this? Is a transformer being overloaded? Is another transformer being underutilized, right? Again, to put a plug for ourselves, and again to touch on Mokhtar's point, ultimately, we talk about the problem, but this is our problem to fix. And at Beacon, that's why we're focused. That's what we're focused on. We have a team of technology folk that have built technology that actually does this, right? We have, like I said, 3 discos in Nigeria now that have real-time visibility on their asset utilization. So they can tell a transformer is overloaded. They can tell there's a load imbalance. And what happens is you can then proactively prevent outages, right? Because even if the power is generated, is transmitted, and then the transformer upstream is blown up because it was overloaded, you will not get power. So that's the point around everything has to be looked at in a continuum. But for us, the key is just implementing technology, simple technology that already exists to ensure grid visibility. We think that's key.
All right, thank you. Dr. Oyebanjo, I think the question here, I think is for you. It says that, can you share any insights on the feasibility of establishing microgrids or off-grid solutions as part of Nigeria's overall energy strategy to complement the national grid? I think you have 2 questions there, but go ahead. That's the first one. I'll let you finish with the first one before giving the second one.
Thank you. I just want to comment on what Bounour said first, and Bim. You notice that people always ask that question. South Africa has 50,000 megawatts. Nigeria with a population of 250 million or 200 million. Why are we not having 200,000 megawatts? You notice that Bounour did not say that it's because of population only. He mentioned that it is not only population, it is the industry in that country. I am very glad that since I've come back to Nigeria, this is the first time this webinar is the only one where this thing has been answered properly. Look, you don't need 50,000 in the country that all their industries have moved away to Ghana. You don't even need up to this 8,000 because the 8,000 they are trying to push, they cannot push it. So we have what we call suppressed demand. And that's why that question on low demand vis-a-vis power assets is a very unique question. And that question is asking you, are you going to be doing what we call in power system regulation, asset indices characterization? It is only people who have worked in a regulated electricity market, like the UK or US, that know what to do to that question that they have asked. How do you turn the low demand to equate to the power asset capacity? And what you do is partly visibility. It's partly visibility, but you have data of all the assets and what they are doing. You will now check the asset health indices. And by means of regulatory regimes, you will now put laws, incentive, performance-based. You will change everything and make the DISCOs and the TCN to carry out some investments that will start to build industrialization and use of your asset. Mokhtar also said something that there is a solution for. In power systems, we always say, you see, when electricity is generated, it cannot be stored. But that's changing, Mokhtar. I have a solution that I will talk to you privately about. It will store your electricity. It will change the way you are doing your business, and it will make money for you. Now, going back to your microgrid, which you talked about. Policy. Put it in the policy. It is already inside the policy. If you go and read the Electricity Act, it is stated there clearly that every generation company should put a certain percentage of their generation portfolio to be from renewable energy system. Who is enforcing it? The person to enforce it does not even know it is there. That's what I will talk about. The thing is already there since last year. But now nobody is asking the generators. So you tell me the number of your percentage of your generation that is coming from renewables, that is coming from microgrids. Nobody. Please go and let's sort those ones first.
Okay. Thank you for that, Doctor. I think the second question I have here is that it says, how can we combine information and operations technologies to address the incessant incidents of vandalization of transmission infrastructure assets across the country?
Good. Exactly what BIM has been talking about, okay, in most ways. You have SCADA, okay, you have data, you have visibility, you can see end to end what is happening. You have some equipment now, the technology is there to see vandals. Look, somebody from the UK brought a technology to Nigeria and went to everywhere. Ministry of Power, TCN, NEC, went to presidency, went to police. He showed them how they can see vandals when they are already 30 minutes away with a small device. They didn't take it. Why? Because that thing is lucrative. To vandalize a transmission tower, to now repair it with 281 billion naira. You think it's a pure, simple something. So you think the person will want you to now fix that problem. Oh, nobody wants to fix the problem, which is the source of their income. So please, you can solve a lot of things. There are so many technologies we have already that will prevent grip collapse, that will prevent electricity theft, but nobody is interested. Somebody who is selling electricity darkness, estimated darkness to others. Do you think the person will invest in the right technology that will make them stop electricity theft? Come on, the person will not. Because estimated billing is giving him or her a lot of money. So the person will never want to do that investment. So how can you leverage on information technology and systems, approach BIM, approach PPS? They will do it for you. Use information to drive regulation. There is something we use in power system regulation. You need to know it to be able to deploy. If you don't know these things, you can't deploy them. You need information about all the assets so that you can use a regulation to turn them around to make impact on your network. Thank you, Duale.
All right, Doctor. I think the last question here will be for Mr. Bounour, and it says, how can we address the issue of energy pricing, particularly in ensuring affordability for the average Nigerian, whilst ensuring financial sustainability of the grid? I think you had answered this before, but again, maybe it would be good. Since it's now directed, you might want to answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, the power sector now is both side generation and distribution are private. So private investors are there to make sure that their business is sustainable. And to have a sustainable business, you need to generate money to take care of your employees, to take care of your community, and to pay taxes and everything. So you need to stay. Of course, the right price, the price have to be regulated. That is the case also in Nigeria and everywhere when it goes to the normal population, and the industrial pricing have to be different because it have to be negotiated between two parties. The distributor and the industrial component, and also the industrial business leader can go and directly buy from producer company. So it's that on that way you have the opportunity to negotiate the price based on conditions, on delivery conditions. So it's a complex thing. It's not, you know, only about how many megawatts you will buy. It's about, you know, the conditions also that you are buying, the quality of the service that you will be receiving, and that will be leading, you know, to the negotiation in terms of pricing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not sure there are any more questions, so I'm just going to try and do a recap of some of the things that we've learned from esteemed panelists here. I think the first one is in dealing with the issues that are on the table, especially in Nigeria. Number one is putting the right person in the right place. So essentially lack of meritocracy. Also the fact that a lot of the projects are in Nigeria are unplanned. There's also the parental effect, which we learned what it was, especially in relation to the power systems. I think regards to from BIM basically gave us an overview of the problems of the grid, basically putting it into 3 buckets: technology, structure, and regulatory. And it basically broke it down and giving us an inkling why it's always important for the grid to have some visibility, especially in terms of what is going on and what is coming in and what is going out. With regards to Bounour, he also mentioned that in terms of the independent state grids, it was important to see how you can basically ring-fence it, especially to deal with the outages that we have. And then also, he had also mentioned that more action was required, especially in terms of protecting the grids. In relation to a lot of the other things, I know that BIM had mentioned that what was also critical was that we should not simply copy and paste, that it was important that, I mean, even though you have solutions that had been deployed, but because our own grid is quite different from what you have in other jurisdictions, it was just important to see how we can tailor and get the best things that will work in regards to our own grid. And he gave examples of the solutions that they had developed that were being utilized in different countries across the world presently. With regards to Dr. Oyebanjo, he basically said that one of the issues that we face relate to the enforceability of the grid codes, and that in terms of where we find ourselves, yes, he also mentioned and spoke about buttressing what Mr. Bounour had said relating to the protection of the grid, essentially indicating that there should be a lot of protection measures and systems in place, and that the fact that the engineers who work in those sectors should be properly trained. I think just on a last note, I think that one of the things that was also critical was that it was important to develop a local understanding, which Mr. Mansour had basically also alluded to, and the fact that in terms of for the grids and in relation to where we are, especially in the country, it was important that there should be regular upgrades of the grids. Yeah, I think that appears to be a summary of a lot of things that were said. I think at this point now, I'll just hand over back to Simisola.
Thank you very much, Ni. Indeed, it's been an insightful session. So 22 grid collapses in 2024 alone. And the next time, God forbid, that happens before the year end, we know what the problems are not. We know definitely that it's not a technology issue. Mr. Adisa has been clear in that regard, and with what Beacon Power Services is doing in Nigeria, and even in Ghana, like you spoke to, in terms of smart grid management and data collation to allow for informed decisions, we know that technology really, truly is not an issue. And also, Mr. Bounour, thank you for clarifying that the generation is not an issue as well. We know over time that generating plants in Nigeria, they're doing their very best to generate. So when, God forbid, we hear about a grid collapse, you know that it's a function of integration, really. The generation working together hand in hand with distribution and then with the national grid to ensure that everything is fully integrated and works well. And thank you also, Dr. Oyebanjo, for confirming that we do have the human capacity. We have the policies, we have the regulations. It's a function and the will to implement and execute all of this. That has been the challenge over time. And thank you all so much also for preferring solutions from grid protection systems to an independent system operator to upgrading and rehabilitating the current facilities that we do have to proper implementation of these policies. Indeed, we're deeply, deeply grateful. So on behalf of the law firm of Duale, Ovia, and Alex-Adedipe, and the entire energy practice team, we want to thank you for making time out of a busy schedule to be with us, to share experience, to share your insights, to share with us the opportunities that we do have in this sector. Indeed, it has been a pleasure. We also want to appreciate every single individual that has joined and has been on the webinar from start to finish. We also appreciate you and thank you as well for making time out to be with us today. So on that note, we come to the end of our last webinar series this year. And we hope that the next time we have our next series from all through 2025, very glad and happy to join us. So thank you very much. To have a wonderful day and compliments of the season.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.